Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Revive and Thrive, Data Recovery with Microsoft Azure. I'm Danielle Lawrence, the marketing specialist here at Davin, and I am thrilled to be your host today. So, we understand that data recovery might not sound like the most exciting topic, but trust us, when disaster strikes, having a solid plan in place can make all the difference. In this webinar, we'll give you an overview of Azure's disaster recovery services and its features, and how you can use this tool to protect your critical data and applications from unexpected disasters. In addition to learning about Azure's features and how to use them, we'll also be sharing some customer success stories and real-life examples of how businesses have bounced back from disasters with Azure, and how you could do the same. So at any time during this event, you can use a dedicated chat to ask your questions, and we'll be answering them throughout the session. Note that today's session is also being recorded, and we'll be sure to send to all attendees in the upcoming days. So buckle up, tune in, and get ready to learn how to revive and thrive with Microsoft Azure. But before we jump into it, here's a brief overview of Davin and what we do. We specialize in enterprise resource planning, cloud solutions, retail solutions, and custom solutions, and we operate in over 13 Caribbean territories. Our experts are certified in Microsoft Azure, Power Platform, Dynamics 365, and we're the largest, most experienced Microsoft Dynamics partner in the territory and a Tier 1 cloud solution provider. Additionally, we support an extensive client base with over 100 active customers throughout the English and Dutch Caribbean region. So now that we're all briefed on who we are at Davin and what we do, I'll hand over the floor to our cloud solutions architect, Lau, to kick off this presentation. Whenever you're ready, Lau.
Thank you, Danielle. Good morning, greetings, and a pleasant welcome to all. I'm the cloud solution architect at Davin, and my career spans 2 decades of IT consultation within the Caribbean and Latin markets. My focus was mainly data center technologies such as private clouds, hardware and software virtualization, and now public cloud. Throughout my tenure, I've had the opportunity to deploy and support a number of popular BCDR solutions over the years, and utilizing Microsoft Azure for disaster recovery has been straightforward, reliable, and cost-effective. Here today, I'd like to share with you some benefits and features of the DR solutions and how Davin can assist you with leveraging the value within Microsoft's Azure. Our agenda for today involves an overview of the disaster recovery services within Azure. We're also going to go over some of the features, how these tools integrate into our existing IT landscape, and we also discuss why Azure for disaster recovery and how Davin has used these services for our customer benefits. So without much further ado, let's get into it. What is disaster recovery or business continuity, and why is it important? To be put simply, DR or disaster recovery in the IT landscape refers to a process of restoring systems and data after an unexpected event that usually disrupts our business operations. Business continuity, as it relates to IT, is the process of ensuring that an organization's critical systems and data functions can continue to operate in event of a disruption. Such events could be natural disasters, cyber attacks, human errors, or even unforeseen events that cause significant disruption to our IT environments. And with that said, let's look at 3 common concepts within the IT landscape where we use to achieve disaster recovery or business continuity for critical systems and data. First up, we have HA or high availability, which usually refers to an IT system or service and its ability to remain operational and accessible to its clients. HA takes the form of a cluster and can contain 2 nodes where they function as a single logical entity, sharing workload and resources amongst themselves. Other terms that people refer to HA configurations as load balancing, failover clustering, or active-active clustering. The major risks here would be a single geographical disaster at your primary site, which can render all of your services inoperable. So the brilliant folks in IT, we came up with disaster recovery configurations, which usually span more than one geographical location. Now, in this scenario, we are not clustered, our hardware is not identical, and we have somehow mitigated risk from primary site failure. So what we have here is that our systems are spread across two different geographical locations. Sometimes our primary site may be able to withstand and sustain 100% of our workloads, while the secondary site might only be able to manage a subset of that. So there is some risk still where we have degraded services over a period of time or not having all of the critical services available at the secondary site. Then we have backup, which refers to the process of creating a copy of applications or critical data or even systems, so removable media, some suitable storage place for long-term retention. This ensures we have a copy, we are recoverable in the event of any type of disaster. In today's presentation, we're going to focus on backup and disaster recovery technologies within Azure. Now, each of our organization's requirements are unique, and the challenges we face in creating and developing our disaster recovery strategies or plan usually comes down to juggling 4 C's: cost, complexity, coverage, and compliance. As referenced on the slide before, traditional DR solutions usually involve a secondary site or even more hardware. And these are just two of the basic factors. Considering multiple sites, more hardware, networking, sometimes specialized staff, we can all see how cost can be negatively impacted here by these factors. Mentioning complexity. Now, complexity plays a role in our DR strategy when we are now looking at multiple data centers, as some processes to restore applications or workloads in these scenarios may become very tedious or complex, or both. There are many enterprise applications that require strict restore processes from tape, which require sharing of sensitive information like encryption keys or even restore passwords. In the disaster recovery scenario, our secondary sites may not always be within our purview and control. This also presents unique risks to the organization. Another often overlooked area is the need to manage and upgrade the platform that executes said tasks of backup and recovery. And while we're at it, let's talk about coverage. Whilst it's not illustrated here, coverage speaks to the ability of the organization to provide adequate protection across all of the IT systems and data. And cost is directly impacted by coverage. As more systems and data protected, the overall cost to maintain our solution increases exponentially. So these are some key factors here where these factors directly impact cost of the DR strategy. And now let's introduce compliance, which really applies to organizations that belong to regulated industries. Industry standards and compliance regulations determine best practices for disaster recovery, such as anti-money laundering regulation. This applies to banks, and they are required to retain customer identification data and transaction data for a minimum of 5 years. This is an example of how compliance can directly impact your disaster recovery strategy as well as the cost. So how does Microsoft intend to assist in this area? So Azure reduces the cost to acquire a disaster recovery solution because there's no need to purchase additional hardware. There are no secondary site costs or even resource costs associated with a secondary site. In the Azure scenario, we only pay for what we use. Azure also reduces the complexity to maintain and support DR solutions with faster onboarding with cloud services and simpler execution for testing and failover by leveraging the power of automation from public cloud. We can now test workloads failing over from primary site to our secondary sites, whether that be within Azure or third-party site, with the click of a button. This removes the guesswork, it removes the stress related to the recovery, and it overall makes a better scenario and experience for organizations. Azure does all of this while ensuring organizations can adhere to the plethora of compliance certifications that exist. Azure supports well over 90 offerings of industry-specific compliance protocols as well as regional standards. Azure also supports two types of storage replication options. There's locally redundant and geo-redundant. Locally redundant allows data to be stored multiple times within the same data center, and this is by default. We can then opt for geo-redundant storage, which adds additional redundancy by replicating our said 3 copies to a second data center region that is geographically distant from the primary. Why do we want to protect to Azure? So very simply put, we don't have to pay for another data center, including incidental costs. Azure, we're not paying for resources until we actually fail over. And enough talk about this, I'd like to introduce you to how we approach disaster recovery planning. And why is this important? What is a disaster recovery plan? A disaster recovery plan is a formal document created internally by necessary stakeholders. This details instructions on how we respond to unplanned incidents within our IT landscape. Yeah. So how do we create such a plan? We looked at these 4 phases. We first analyze our existing infrastructure and IT landscape. This analysis is conducted with a fine-tooth comb. Very comprehensive risk assessment and impact analysis needs to be done. The goal here, we want to identify any potential risks and vulnerabilities within the IT environment. And we also like to assess the impact of any type of disruption or disaster to the critical systems and data. Coming out of the analysis phase, we should be able to derive 2 important metrics. Recovery point objective, which is the maximum amount of data loss that is acceptable in case of a disaster. And we use this to determine how frequently backups need to be taken and how much data needs to be replicated. The other metric is recovery time objective. This determines the maximum amount of downtime that is acceptable for each application or workload. We use this metrics to determine how quickly each workload needs to be recovered in case of the disaster. In the strategy phase, we develop and implement plans to mitigate the risk using different technologies that are available to us. Yeah, these different DR solutions are sometimes what they refer to data replication, backup and recovery procedures, or even failover mechanisms are all here to ensure data availability, system availability, and resilience to our environment. In the implementation phase, we put the strategy into action. We also incorporate a bit of testing to ensure that it's effective. And this basically, at this point here, where we identify whether our gaps were covered, whether we need more redundant systems, whether our existing strategies are identified actually provide the coverage that we need. Testing and maintenance, whilst it's self-explanatory, it's very pertinent to the maintenance of our overall disaster recovery plan. It is important that we test regularly and we update regularly to ensure our plans stay effective and capable. Our ongoing monitoring and management of the existing IT infrastructure should lend to identifying any gaps that were missed or new risks or vulnerabilities that may arise over time. So now let's take a look at 2 common BCDR services within Azure. First up, we have Azure Site Recovery Services, which is basically a disaster recovery solution that enables businesses to replicate and recover virtual machines and physical servers to an alternative location, which is a location that you own or co-located location, or even to Azure. So let's take a little deep dive into what ASR
You
can do
hate
for us.
outages. They're probably your worst nightmare. Today, IT executives will only be able to find peace of mind if there's a disaster recovery solution that manages outages, prevents downtime, and helps them maintain compliance. But there's a problem. Traditional disaster recovery solutions are often piecemeal and require owning or leasing a secondary site, which comes with a large price tag and unnecessary administrative overhead. It doesn't have to be this way. Azure Site Recovery is a built-in disaster recovery solution. It orchestrates and manages DR for your Azure virtual machines, on-premises virtual machines, or physical servers. Because we understand DR is of critical importance, it needs to be simple and cost-effective. With Azure Site Recovery, there is no need to purchase additional hardware or hire more IT personnel for disaster recovery. Only pay for the compute resources you spin up in Azure in the event of a DR drill or a real disaster. With Azure Site Recovery, you can painlessly replicate your applications and data to a different Azure region, all from the Azure portal. You can also arrange the right failover sequence for your complex applications, such as SAP and SharePoint, with a single click using recovery plans. Azure Site Recovery makes managing your compliance drills oh so easy. Test your disaster recovery plans without impacting end users. Perform DR drills as many times as you want without affecting your production applications. Worried about scaling? Don't be. Azure Site Recovery can be scaled to as many applications as needed. With best-in-class recovery point objective, your data loss in case of a disaster will be as low as a few seconds to single-digit minutes. Also, with best-in-class recovery time objective, it takes as low as 30 minutes to complete a recovery of complex applications such as SAP and SharePoint. Reduce cost, complexity, and recovery time. Breathe easy with Azure Site Recovery.
So there you have it, Azure Site Recovery. This is a process where an agent is installed on a local machine within your data center. Copies of your hard drive are then replicated into the cloud. The copy replication process is asynchronous, which means the data is written to backup resources after it's already written to the primary storage. This is sequential instead of simultaneous, which requires substantially less bandwidth and works over long distances. Azure Site Recovery uses virtual disks as backup, not virtual machines. This makes a big difference with regards to the cost of the solution. Before failover, we're only paying for storage. After failover, we're paying for storage and consumption. Unlike virtual machines, virtual disks don't consume compute costs. So when we have our site recovery setup and replicating, at that point, we will only be paying for virtual disks. When we click fail over and our virtual machines are then provisioned within Azure, at that point in time, consumption costs become active. I hope this is clear for us. So let's move on to what Azure Backup is. Azure Backup is a cloud-based backup solution by Microsoft. It's pretty simple, very easy to use. You can recover your data, you can recover applications or entire workloads into Azure using Azure Backup. Now, Azure Backup, because it's natively cloud-based, it provides many of the native cloud advantages intrinsic to the product, such as multiple copies. This is by default. It keeps 3 copies of your data within data center that you've configured. We can then additionally add geo-redundant storage to our backups. Another plus I would say for Azure Backup would be a very familiar interface. It allows for ease of management. And it also gives us granular control of network bandwidth consumption. We can enter into the Azure Backup agent and tune how much bandwidth we'll allow it to use. Let's take a look at an overview of Azure Backup.
Being an IT expert, you know that in our digital age, data is like gold. It's valuable and you need to protect it. 30% of organizations have experienced data loss over the last year. Even a redundant storage won't protect you from data loss caused by ransomware or human error. You will try to take advantage of your legacy backup solution, but it's hard to scale in the cloud, and in most cases, it gets expensive and complicated to manage at scale. What you need is a cost-effective, simple, and secure backup solution that can meet your and your customers' expectations. Microsoft Azure Backup is that solution. How? By eliminating unnecessary costs. Azure Backup is Azure's built-in backup service, which doesn't require any infrastructure, so you can eliminate infrastructure cost as well as management overhead. Azure Backup is simple to use and intuitive. You can easily back up and restore an entire VM, files, and folders, or even a SQL database with a single click in Azure. We understand the importance of security when it comes to data. Azure Backup protects your data from ransomware. You can even enable multi-factor authentication as a security PIN, and only authorized users will be able to perform critical backup operations. If suspicious activity is spotted, you get a prompt notification. Even if you choose to delete your backups, Azure Backup will retain data for up to 2 weeks, so you can always recover from accidental deletion. Eliminate unnecessary costs, enjoy ease of use, and get peace of mind knowing your data is protected with Azure Backup.
There we have it, Azure Backup. Simple, easy to use, cheap. So now I'd like to walk you through 5 simple steps to give you an overview of how easy it is to really put this product to use and drive value in your organization. First, you'd need a Microsoft Azure tenant and a subscription. Davin can assist with that. After logging into your portal, you navigate and create a backup vault. Step 2, set up a backup policy to specify frequency and the retention. Step 3, we download the agent from Azure, which allows us to register our virtual machine or our source data machines. And by installing this agent, this allows our machines to communicate with the vault back in Azure over TLS 1.2. Step 4, on the agent, we create a backup schedule which specifies when backup should run and what should be protected. Step 5, we test backup by triggering a job manually. After we verify data is actually stored within the backup vault, our workload is now protected. We can then set up monitoring and alerting to ensure that backups are running as expected and to receive notifications of any issues. This entire process will usually take no more than a couple hours to complete, providing simple, easy to use, unparalleled disaster recovery protection from the cloud. Now I'd like to introduce you to one other BCDR option in Azure, and that would be Azure File Sync. So what is Azure File Sync? Simply put, Azure File Sync is a cloud-based platform as a service. So it's a file share service that enables organizations to synchronize files across multiple locations whilst keeping the flexibility, performance, and compatibility of a Windows file server. It's flexible in the way we could use it, where some organizations may opt to keep a full copy of the data locally, which is what we would consider the traditional scenario. But Azure File Sync also additionally adds the ability to transform our Windows file server into a quick cache. And that cache really is, the word cache determines that it's not the entire footprint of your file server, and it's just a percentage of it. We can also use any protocol that's available on the Windows server to access our data locally. including SMB, NFS, and FTPS. And we could also have as many caches as we need. All right, so Azure File Sync is very flexible. So let's go over some of the features of Azure File Sync. So multi-site sync basically is a feature that allows in multiple locations to stay in sync and accessible. Cloud tiering moves infrequently accessed files or files that we don't necessarily use frequently. It moves those files to the cloud, which frees up storage space on our Windows cache. Right, so we could see cloud tiering as turning our server into a lightweight performance cache for Azure files. Azure files can also integrate into cloud backup, where we have Azure backup at the back of Azure files within Azure, and this now creates point-in-time recovery and retention policies without redundant data transfer. What does the redundant data transfer mean? We can restore from the cloud within the cloud, and the files will automatically be synchronized, or we can restore to on-prem from the cloud. The option is ours. Rapid File Server DR is a feature that basically allows, so if we can think of it like this, all of our files are actually stored within Azure in the storage account. Our file server only acts as a cache, as a temporary storage place. Rapid File Server Disaster Recovery is a feature where allows the customer or the organization to quickly, like almost instantaneously, recover a file server functionality within the environment with a couple clicks. So basically, we download our AFS agent onto the machine, we register the machine, we ensure that the Windows file services are installed, and that's it. We now have a functioning file server back on our network. Now, data integrity and security is very important as this traverses over the internet. So how does AFS deal with security? So AFS compresses and encrypts the data before leaving the source computer. This is done with a 256-bit cipher, and it traverses TLS 1.2 to Azure. Admin owns and manages keys. Now, this is a very important fact. Only the customer has access to the key. Without the key, our information cannot be recovered. Microsoft has no way to interpret that information. AFS is simple to use, it is resilient, and offers speedy recovery in case of a server failure. Now that we've covered the major products and options within Azure for BCDR, I'd like to go over and recap the major benefits of Azure. Azure offers an end-to-end backup and disaster recovery solution that's simple, secure, scalable, and cost-effective. It can also be integrated with our on-premises data protection solutions, our existing enterprise-class solutions. Whether it be the case of a service disruption, accidental deletion, or corruption of data, Azure provides the tooling to recover any of our services in a timely and orchestrated manner. Azure Backup and Disaster Recovery solution is simple to architect. They are cloud native, highly available, and resilient. And we think it's a great option for the BCDR solutions. So let's take a look at some examples of how Darwin has made businesses better with Azure BCDR services. So what Darwin has enhanced and empowered our customer base to withstand untimely disasters by utilizing and integrating the Azure BCDR technologies. We've deployed these technologies across varying industries. All right, our customer base span retail, banking and finance, manufacturing, and even national insurance boards, to name a few. So this slide here is to help you correlate how Darwin can assist with your existing pain points in determining a effective disaster recovery strategy, and how best we can utilize any of the technologies to aid. At this point, I'd like to conclude the content for today, and I'd like to thank you for your time and patience. We'd also like to welcome any and all questions. You can unmute your mic or you can even send them into the chat. We will have them all answered.
Hi,
Thank
Lau.
you very much and feel free to speak up.
So far we have two questions. First one is from Ronan. Is this solution similar to Nutanix?
Nutanix would be our on-prem technology, and I am unable to confirm if they are similar because we do not carry Nutanix. I'm sorry.
And the second question is from Amit. How does this solution prevent data that has ransomware/malware hidden in it from being backed up to Azure?
Okay, so the second question takes us out of the realm of disaster recovery and more into the realm of, well, basically trying to figure out how we got corrupted. Why would the data be infected within the backup? Wouldn't it need to be infected before the backup? So the question, let's take it in a different angle. Let's say we have a backup that is not infected with ransomware. How do we ensure that the existing ransomware in the environment does not infect our existing technologies? Well, the encryption at rest and encryption in transit is one way that the backup technologies ensure that external technologies are unable to interfere or contaminate, so to speak, our backup.
Okay, Amit, I hope that answers your question. Do we have any more questions? Nope. I see we have something. From Christoph Singh. The key for restoring a backup. How is this key stored? Is it stored on a site or is it a file, for example, that can be stored somewhere?
So Microsoft Azure provides a service called the Azure Key Vault, which is a secure service that allows for encryption keys and ciphers, and that's one service that we could use to store your key.
Well, any more questions? No. Okay, great. Well, that is a wrap, folks. Thank you so much to Lau and the Cloud team for this presentation, and thank you to our audience for joining us today. So we hope that you found this webinar informative, enjoyable, and you now have a much better understanding of the benefits of Azure Data Recovery Services. But before we close, we've made it really easy for you to share any additional thoughts, questions, or comments with us. We're going to be placing a link in the chat in a few minutes, and you can access our feedback form through that link. If you'd like more information on acquiring Microsoft Azure or any other product, just fill in your details and someone from our team will reach out to you. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to hosting you for future webinars. As mentioned before, this event has been recorded and we'll be sure to send via email to all attendees soon. I've just placed the link in the chat so you guys could feel free to access and share any questions, thoughts, or comments with us. Okay, everyone, that brings us to the end. You guys have a great day and a great week ahead. And enjoy your holiday on Thursday.